Agent Kael Mercer had spent most of his career operating in places where mistakes meant disappearing without a trace. The mission in the mountain city of Velmora was supposed to be routine compared to his past assignments. His orders were simple: track a suspected underground network connected to a man named Victor Halden and report his findings to headquarters every 6 hours. For several days, everything went exactly as planned. Kael worked quietly from a small safe house apartment filled with communication equipment, maps, and surveillance photos. Then, late one rainy night, something changed. While speaking with headquarters through his radio, the voice on the other end suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The signal turned into loud static. Kael immediately adjusted the frequency and tried reconnecting, but nothing came through. He waited several minutes before attempting again, but the radio remained silent. The connection that had always been reliable was simply gone. Sitting alone in the dimly lit room while rain tapped against the window, Kael slowly realized he had just lost contact with the only people who knew he was there. Velmora was not an easy city to navigate. Built between steep mountains and a deep harbor, it was filled with narrow streets, crowded markets, and old industrial districts where strangers could disappear without being noticed. Kael stepped out of the safe house the next morning, blending into the moving crowd like he had been trained to do. Normally, every move he made would be reported back to headquarters. They would guide his decisions, confirm his observations, and warn him if something changed. But now the silence followed him everywhere. As he walked through the busy market district, he studied the people around him more carefully than usual. Somewhere in this city was Victor Halden, the man responsible for the operation Kael had been sent to investigate. Without communication from headquarters, Kael had two choices. He could abandon the mission and disappear quietly, or he could continue working alone and hope he wasn't walking directly into a trap. Back in the safe house, Kael began examining the radio equipment piece by piece. He removed panels, tested wires, and ran multiple frequency checks. Every component worked exactly as it should. The equipment wasn't damaged and the signal transmitter inside the room was still functioning normally. That meant the problem wasn't inside the safe house. Something outside the building was blocking communication signals entirely. Kael sat back in his chair and looked at the quiet radio sitting on the desk. If someone had the ability to block outside communication across the city, then they had planned it carefully. That kind of system required powerful transmitters and precise control. More importantly, it meant someone wanted the city cut off from outside contact. Kael knew what that could mean for him. If headquarters couldn't reach him, they might assume the mission had failed. And if the people responsible for the interference knew he was there, he could quickly become their next target. Later that afternoon, while moving through the market square again, Kael noticed something unusual. A woman was following him. She wasn't trying to hide it completely, but she kept enough distance to avoid drawing attention. Kael turned down a quiet alley and waited. A few seconds later, the woman stepped into the same alleyway. Before she could say anything, Kael was already facing her. Instead of acting surprised, she calmly raised her hands and introduced herself as Lena Voss. Lena explained that she worked as an information broker in Velmora. She made her living by collecting and selling secrets to the highest bidder. What caught Kael's attention was the next thing she said. Lena claimed she knew why his radio had stopped working. According to her sources, several communication towers across the city had been secretly shut down during the night. Someone had replaced them with powerful transmitters that could block outside signals completely. And the man believed to be behind it all was Victor Halden. Kael didn't trust Lena immediately, but the information she provided matched what he had already discovered. Together they traveled through several quiet streets before entering a series of tunnels beneath the city. The tunnels eventually led them to an abandoned railway station that looked like it had been closed for decades. Dust covered the old platforms, and broken lights hung from the ceiling. But deeper inside the station, something very different waited. Rows of communication machines filled the underground space, connected by hundreds of cables running along the walls and ceiling. Blue indicator lights blinked across the equipment, showing that the machines were still active. Lena explained that Victor Halden had built this hidden network to control communications across the entire city. With it, he could block outside signals, monitor transmissions, and prevent anyone from contacting the outside world. That meant Kael's headquarters might have no idea that he had lost contact. After studying the underground system, Kael realized that the equipment in the station was only part of the network. The main signal was coming from a control transmitter located inside a tall communications tower near the harbor. That tower was the center of Halden's operation. Late that night, Kael and Lena moved toward the harbor district. The tower stood high above the surrounding buildings, surrounded by security lights and armed guards. Kael waited until the patrols moved to the far side of the building before quietly climbing a maintenance ladder attached to the tower's side. The climb was long and slow, but eventually he reached a small control room near the top. Inside were several powerful transmitters generating the interference signal that had blocked the city's communications. One by one, Kael began shutting them down. As each machine powered off, the interference signal slowly weakened. When the final transmitter shut down, the control room became quiet except for the wind outside the tower. Kael switched on his radio and adjusted the frequency again. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice suddenly broke through the static. Headquarters had finally received his signal. They had been trying to contact him for hours without success and had begun to suspect something had gone wrong. Kael briefly explained what he had discovered about Halden's communication network. But the message from headquarters brought new information that changed everything. Victor Halden had already disappeared from the city earlier that night. His network had been shut down, but the man behind it was gone. Standing at the top of the tower and looking out over the lights of Velmora, Kael understood what that meant. The mission was no longer about restoring contact. Now it was about finding a man who had already vanished into the shadows.